Could Candace Owens land in jail for exposing what she says she knows about Charlie Kirk's assassination? Well, some have been concerned about her safety. She took a break just recently, publicly announced a 10-day break, and people have been very concerned that she was unalived because she's challenging the narrative around her friend's premature death. But apparently she's alive and well. The conservative political commentator emerged from the shadows with a tweet on X that really stirred the pot. Hundreds of thousands of people responded to this tweet, and in typical Candace style, she didn't ease back in. She lit a match. Let me read you this tweet. It says, "Don't worry about the gag order in the Charlie Kirk case. I plan to violate it on the world's behalf. The things I've discovered this past week are enough to burn the house down." That's quite something. I look forward to seeing what she comes out with when she returns to her broadcast, because that's not your everyday social media post. That's a direct challenge to the authority of the court. And it could, some say, have serious consequences. So today we're going to look at the question, will Candace Owens end up in jail for violating a gag order that a 4th District Court judge named Judge Tony Graff issued? Will she land in jail? Let's start with what's going on. Let me give you a little context here. Candace Owens, she's obviously been trying to find out who killed her friend, but she's also under fire for questioning the sex of France's President Emmanuel Macron's wife, Brigitte. So there's a lawsuit against her for that. And she's no stranger to controversy. She's just not going to back down. She's like a bulldog. She said with regard to Macron's wife that she'd stake her career that Brigitte was a man.
Receiving a legal letter from a sitting president of a foreign country is extraordinary. So extraordinary that it may have never happened before in human history, okay? A year ago, when I said that I would stake my entire professional career on the fact that Brigitte Macron, the current First Lady of France, was born a man, there were many people, of course, who did not believe me because that just sounds crazy. But even those people, thanks to Emmanuel Macron's strongly worded letter, which he had his legal team put together and ask me not to publicize, are now starting to pay a little bit of attention.
And so there's that. And then there's the fact that she was just banned from Australia just days ago. The country's high court upheld a visa denial. Let's take a look at that.
Candace Owens has lost an appeal against a decision to ban her from entering Australia. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke rejected her application for a visa last year ahead of a national speaking tour in November. The American is known for claiming that French First Lady Brigitte Macron is transgender and for inflammatory remarks about Jewish and Muslim people. The High Court today tossed out her challenge after she claimed the ban went against the principles of free speech.
So now look at this. Within 1 week, she's banned from a nation, and now she's threatening to defy a U.S. court. It's fair to say that Candace Owens is under both political and legal pressure, and she's choosing to push back rather than back down. Now, whatever you think of her, you got to say she's got some courage. She's got some bravado. But let's look just quickly at what a gag order actually means. Many people don't understand that. When a judge issues a gag order, they're basically saying no one involved in this case can make public statements that might influence the outcome. And so that usually includes attorneys, witnesses, and sometimes even journalists that are connected to the proceeding. Now, typically, the goal with a gag order is to protect the integrity of the trial, to prevent public comments from tainting jurors or intimidating witnesses. But here's where it gets tricky. Free speech is protected under the First Amendment. And Charlie Kirk, Candace's friend, was big on free speech, preserving free speech. So gag orders walk this very fine line between, keeping trials fair and silencing public voices. And judges have to balance those two things. And it's not easy. We saw Trump, a gag order put on Trump. He was fined actually several times for violating gag orders during his hush money trial in New York. It was like $9,000. The judge even warned that if he continued, that jail was next. And then Roger Stone, a Trump advisor, a former Trump advisor, he also had a gag order placed on him. And when he posted something that appeared to threaten the the court tightened restrictions on what he could say and almost threw him behind bars. So gag orders are serious, and defying one, especially in a very public, intentional way, can land someone in contempt of court. All right, so if you break a gag order, you're violating a direct command from the court. They call it contempt of court. And it carries consequences. So judges could fine you, sometimes thousands of dollars per statement, or they could order jail time, especially if the violation is deliberate or repeated. They can force you to retract or remove what you said publicly. And in extreme cases, it can even affect the outcome of the case itself. And that seems to be what the judge is concerned about. So, in legal terms, contempt of court is meant to protect the authority of the judiciary. But looking at it from a spiritual lens, it's about defying lawful order. And when you do it openly, you're daring the system to make an example out of you. And so, could Candace actually go to jail? Some say yes, but it depends on three things. Number one, whether the gag order even applies to her. If she's not a party or a witness, or the court's authority seems very limited here. However, what she actually says next could factor in. Announcing intent isn't enough. See, I'm going to break the gag order on the world's behalf. The violation actually happens when she reveals restricted information or undermines the case. So we don't know what she's going to say. Maybe by the time you've watched this video, she will have already said it. But then the number three is, how far is the judge really willing to go? Some judges fine, other judges in prison. It depends on how much they want to send a message. So yes, it's possible. It's possible. Personally, I don't think it's probable, but it's possible. But then again, this is about more than one commentator, right? It's about whether or not freedom of speech still means freedom when the truth makes people uncomfortable. I want you to listen to what Alex Jones from InfoWars had to say about this gag order.
Secretive trials in history, the judge is making everything secret with gag orders, including the police reports and 3,000 witnesses, associates, or anyone that knew Charlie Kirk. They're saying effectively any talk show host that knew him or talked to him is under a gag order.
All right, let's step back for a minute and just talk about what's really at stake here. So we're living in a time when truth is really controversial and courage can be very costly. Voices are being silenced in the name of order and protection, but sometimes what's being protected isn't justice, it's power. And so whether or not you agree with Candace Owens, her defiance raises a real question. Who gets to decide what truth is safe to speak? Who gets to make that decision? And there's a spiritual parallel here. In the book of Acts, the apostles were commanded by the religious authorities to stop preaching in the name of Jesus. And what was their response? We must obey God rather than man. That doesn't mean we ignore the laws. Romans 13 tells us to respect the governing authorities, but it does mean there's moments when the price of silence is too high and the call to truth outweighs the risk of punishment. And so we have to discern the line between rebellion and righteousness. Sometimes people break the rules because they're reckless, and other times they do it because they're just resisting something unjust. And that's the tension playing out right now. Candace Owens says she's doing this on the world's behalf. And if that's true, she's stepping into the storm willingly. And I'm not here to endorse what she says or predict how the court will react, but I do want to issue a warning and a lesson. When you speak against powerful systems, you can expect backlash. And when you expose hidden things, you can expect resistance. And that's not conspiracy talk, that's a biblical reality. Ephesians 6 verse 12 reminds us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right? But against principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness. Demon powers influence people. And sometimes the battle for truth happens in the courtroom, sometimes it happens in the media, and sometimes it happens in the spirit. So if Candace Owens believes she's standing up for truth, she needs to count the cost, because truth-telling always comes with one. And for those of us watching, especially believers, this moment should challenge us too. Will we shrink back when the pressure comes to tell the truth that God has given us, or will we speak what God tells us to speak no matter who's trying to silence us? So the question is, will Candace Owens end up in jail. We don't know yet. We don't know. I think it's not probable. But you never know anymore what's going to happen. She's certainly daring the system to make that choice. She's being provocative. And if the judge decides to enforce the gag order strictly, you never know. And if not, it's just more controversy. Either way, listen, this isn't just about one very polarizing woman. It's not just about one court case or one assassination. It's about a broader struggle between speech and silence, between truth and conviction, between truth and control, rather, between conviction and compliance. So I'll be watching this story closely because it's not just political, it's prophetic. And if you believe the truth should never be muzzled, hit subscribe, share this video, and stay tuned. And remember, in every generation, God raises voices that refuse to bow to the pressure of the age. Listen, I want you to be part of the solution. We're at prime time right now, awakening and revival in the nations. Whatever nation you're in, I've got a free ebook over at awakeningprayerhubs.com. Check out our prayer movement. We're in about 130 nations, and we need you on board. Go download the free ebook, check out what we're doing, and I hope to see you on the other side. Have a breakthrough day.
The whole world is in crisis, and the signs of the times are accelerating. We're in a hinge moment in history, and the enemy knows his time is short. But in 2007, God woke me up after midnight and spoke to my heart about a third great awakening. Now, we're closer than we've ever been before. That's why I'm calling 1 million revival-minded intercessors to join me in making a new appeal to heaven. I'm calling remnant prayer warriors to gather in one accord to push back the darkness that's invading our churches, our families, and our nations. The enemy is raging. The great falling away is underway, but God always responds to united prayer and fasting. Join me and intercessors in over 100 nations at Awakening Prayer Hubs. Together, we can change the course of history. AwakeningPrayerHubs.com. Join the movement.